the vast majority of people are living in a prison, and it's called fear of what other people think. I don't give a shit.
Is there a chance that I'm a reptile and I don't even know it?
Well, why can't we see them then? Well, my answer to that is you can hardly see anything, mate. There is a global network of secret societies that are driving human dystopia. Having sex with dead bodies, drinking blood, satanic human sacrifice ritual.
Do you think King Charles could be a satanic paedophile?
What the fuck is going on? That's what I want to know. So what happens at death? Reincarnation is real. We're not human. We are consciousness having a brief human experience. We form our perceptions from information. Control information, you control the perceptions. This is what censorship's all about. The official story of 9/11. It's a joke. How do the few control the many? Cease to cooperate with it. Digital ID? Fuck off. The power that politicians have is the power we bloody give to them in the form of acquiescence and obedience. And it's got to stop now, because if it doesn't, we're fucked.
For the last year, I've been working with Ryan from Change, and now they're sponsoring our channel so we can keep bringing you these conversations. Change are the #1 mentoring program that teaches you e-commerce step by step where no previous experience is necessary. Whilst working with Change, I've seen life-changing money be made and community members free up more time to spend with their families. A successful business is not built overnight, and you would need to put in the work before reaping the rewards. The more you put in, the more you get out. The community are full of like-minded people, all striving for success and all willing to help each other. Change offer one-on-one training, online courses and group seminars so you get all the support you need to succeed. If you're looking for a new opportunity, get in touch with Ryan via Instagram at RyanJB, and he'll take you through all the steps to building your own successful business. David, thanks for coming on.
No problem.
I started reading the roadmap, and thank God you agreed to come on, because that book's too thick for me. But I want to come back to some interesting parts within that book.
Sure.
Very, very, very thought-provoking.
That's one of my smaller ones.
Yeah, that's too thick for me. But before we get into that, a few questions, because I haven't really seen your stuff since back in the Terry Wogan days.
Right.
So just a few questions to see where you're still at. Do you still think some of the world leaders are shape-shifting aliens, the royals and politicians, and if so, anyone in particular?
Well, what I'm saying is that the perception that the conspiracy to enslave humanity is only on the political, financial level, and that's where most people see it, is way out from the truth. What I'm saying is, if you keep expanding the conspiracy outwards, you're eventually going to another dimension of reality. And that dimension has, understandably, I guess, entities in it that look anything but human. And that's where it's really coming from. And so in my journey, if you like, since the top of my head blew off in 1990 when I was, presenting for the BBC, or just finished presenting for the BBC. It's been a sequence that's basically gone deeper and deeper in the rabbit hole. Because I've always worked on the premise that whatever I know, there's always more to know. I think if you reach a point where you say, I've got it now, I got it, then you stop. You say, I've got it. And basically you become an eddy in the river. And there's all that possibility and potential insight flowing past, but you're here now, you're stuck in the eddy. Oh, I've got it now. Well, I've never thought I've got it. I don't think anyone's got it. We're getting it. The more we research and the more open-minded research we do, the more you will get. And so it's been a sequence where in the early 1990s, it was all about the fact that there is a network of secret societies, fiercely compartmentalized, so most people within the network don't know the real big picture. But the inner circle is actually running it. And this network, this global network of secret societies, has an interlocking leadership. And it's that which works through politics, all frickin' sides of it, left, right, and center, that works through the corporations, that works through the Silicon Valley corporations, that not only works through things like the World Health Organization, but through the Rockefellers in 1948 created it, that created the United Nations, the World Bank, all these global institutions, which now increasingly dictate global events, that were behind the creation of the European Union, which, for what reason? If there's a few of you and you want to control the many, you have to centralize decision-making. The more diversity and points of decision-making there are, the less any central cabal can dictate events. So you want to centralize decision-making. So, for instance, the European Union, you've got the so-called political parliament of the European Union in Strasbourg. You're having a laugh, are you? It's Brussels and the bureaucrats that are deciding everything. So it's a big centralized institution, which means from those few at the center, you can dictate events throughout the entirety of Europe. So you've got this this network of secret societies. And then, as I was researching this in the early 1990s, I started to realize that a lot of these inner circle initiates of this, and some of them rich and famous, were involved in satanic human sacrifice ritual. I found that they were involved in pedophilia. And the more that I've understood this network, the more you realize that Satanism and pedophilia are actually one of the great foundations of this network and how it works, not least how they keep people in line. What was Epstein doing except creating a situation where people could be blackmailed, people of influence, political influence, royal influence, to do what they were told?
Was he a shape-shifting lizard, Epstein?
Well, that's interesting you should say that, because one of the women who was a girl when she was in the Epstein circle, a lady called Juliet Bryant, she tells the story of how she was in South Africa. She was a would-be model, and she was invited to a meeting with Jeffrey Epstein and Bill Clinton, and she said, I gave Epstein kind of credibility that he could do what he was telling me because Bill Clinton was sitting next to him. And when you do the research, because you try to check everything, Epstein and Clinton were in South Africa at that time, right? So then she gets into the Epstein circle and she goes to the island. And she said that on one occasion, she looked at Epstein and he transformed into something else. She said it was not like directly reptilian. She described it as a reptilian dragon alien type of thing, which kind of shocked her. And she said, well, at that time, I knew nothing about any of this. And then later, her mother started doing research into what I was saying, and it kind of fitted. I do research over such a vast spectrum of subjects that appear on the surface to have no connection. But unless you do them, you can't understand the true nature of the here and now everyday events. So we're sitting here now, for instance, because one of the great areas that I've researched and go into in the roadmap is the nature of reality itself. Without understanding the nature of reality and how it's nothing like we experience it, you can't understand daily events. Because the inner circle of this cult, there's basically two worlds, right? There's the world of the cult, and what that's doing is passing over through the generations, the inner circle, not Bill and Joe down the lodge, highly advanced knowledge of where humanity is being taken to greater and greater dystopia, but also the nature of reality. Now, that has to be kept from the people, the population, the target population. So what you do, and if you do the research, you'll find this is the case. That cult inner circle and people like the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds and such like, they have created and control the sources of information that the population get. So if you look in America, the education system, programming system in America was instigated by J.D. Rockefeller, the Rockefeller family. And so on one side, you've got the cult passing over this advanced knowledge to its inner core through the generations, isolating it from the population, and then controlling what the population see. So people say, "Oh well, look at the global media. It's owned by so few people." Yeah, them. They own it. And why is the media telling you the same as the education system does? You look at Silicon Valley. Now, of course, the internet is this massive source from which people get their sense of reality. They get their perceptions from. We form our perceptions from information. Control information, you control the perceptions. This is what censorship's all about. So you look at Peter Thiel of Palantir, this CIA seed-funded organization that is massively involved in the surveillance through the intelligence agencies, the military, NHS in Britain, etc. You look at Elon Musk, of all the companies that he runs, including X. You look at David Sachs, who's been appointed to be the AI crypto czar of Donald Trump. And you look at your Zuckerbergs, and you look at your Jeff Bezos, and they also are expressions of this cult. And servants of this cult. You know, if you can see them in the public arena, they're gophers. The real power is behind the scenes. So all these sources of information that the population is getting are coming from these cult sources and these cult gophers. So you have two worlds, and they are divided by one word: knowledge. You keep the advanced knowledge within your inner circle of the cult, and you give the population basically a load of old crap. And so you keep from them as best you can, and it's very effective, the nature of reality itself. So if I said to most people, when you look through your eyes, can you see everything in the space you're looking at? They'd say, "Oh, of course I can, mate. Of course I can. It's bloody obvious. See everything." No, you can't. Staggeringly, and I've said many times, this should be taught to every child at the earliest time that they can grasp it. According to mainstream science, the electromagnetic spectrum, which is basically our experienced reality, is 0.005% of what exists in the universe in terms of energy in all its forms. Visible light, which is the only band of frequency that we can see, everything we're looking at now is within that band of frequency, is a smear of the 0.005%. So if you take that, humans are basically blind. But because it seems that we're seeing everything in the space that we're looking at, then people don't realize that they are. So things that they understand, because they understand the nature of reality, because it's passed on, most people don't understand and thus dismiss by reflex action. I'll give you an example. You know when people say, "Honestly, mate, I saw this UFO. It came out of nowhere and then disappeared into nowhere." Or people say, Or there was this entity and it just came out of nowhere at the end of the bed, and then disappeared. But it hasn't appeared from nowhere and it hasn't disappeared. What this phenomena has done is entered visible light, which is the only band that we can see, and to the observer, it's appeared out of nowhere. And when it leaves, it appears to disappear into nowhere. All it's done is change its frequency to enter visible light and then gone back to where it came from. And so we're sitting here now, and the entirety of infinite reality exists in the space that we're sitting in. But we are only able, like the radio and television stations and the analog system, we're only able to see one channel. All the other channels, I mean, what happens? You've got a radio station, you've got a radio. So you tune it to radio station A. Okay, I can hear it. Okay, so now move it to radio station B. Oh, I can hear another station now. Yeah. And the station you've just gone from, station A, has not ceased to exist. It's still broadcasting. It's that you're not tuned to it anymore. And these, I call them biological computers, lock us in to a certain band of frequency. And that's why we can only see a limit, a tiny limit of what there is to see. And so when you talk about
aliens,
and non-human entities, understandably, from that perspective, people say, well, why can't we see them then? Well, my answer to that is you can hardly see anything, mate.
Have you ever seen an alien? And what am I to look out for if I'm to spot one?
Well, first of all, they operate in this other dimension overwhelmingly. I've talked to people all around the world, literally all around the world, who've had the experience of what's called shape-shifting, which can be quite simply explained.
Yeah, what is shape-shifting?
Okay.
In brief.
Right.
Because I want to talk to you about the moon after this.
Okay. So these particular bloodlines, they have two energetic fields. We have an energetic field, the human field, right? Now, okay, oh dear. Again, you have to go into certain background about the nature of reality itself before shape-shifting becomes explainable.
People are going to struggle with the words reality and aliens in the same sentence.
Well, they can struggle how they like. I'm only interested in what's going on. So let's put it this way. One of the things that's very, very clear to me is as this technological explosion is unfolding, getting more and more faster and faster, it's actually mirroring the very reality that we're experiencing and the way we experience it. So in this room probably is Wi-Fi. And Wi-Fi is encoded in a radiation field with all the information of the internet. If I get a computer, but we can't see it, where's the frickin' Wi-Fi? It's outside visible light, so we can't see it. So then you get a computer. And what the computer does is decode the Wi-Fi. And it decodes the Wi-Fi and it puts it on the screen in a completely different form to how it exists in the Wi-Fi field. It's graphics, it's moving pictures, it's words, whatever. And the inside the computer is where the decoding is going on. So we're looking at the screen, but actually everything's going on inside the computer. So then, this is why I call the human body a biological computer. When you do the research into how the body works, and this again is mainstream science, the five senses, which is how we interact with this reality we think is real, are picking up waveform information. A wonderful example, perfect example, is the ears. I'm talking to you now, but there's not words passing between us. What's passing between us is a frequency field of information generated by my vocal cords. Your ears pick up those sound waves. They turn them into electrical signals. They communicate them electrically to the brain, and different parts of the brain specialize in decoding the different senses. So the visual part is back here somewhere. And then the brain puts together that information into a sense of reality that we think is external to us. And, it looks as if it's external the way we experience it. But actually, it's all going on in here, just as it's going on inside the computer. So all the senses work in the same way. They take frequency information and they turn it into electrical information and communicate it to the brain. So what I'm looking at now is, in its base form, I'm looking at an information field, which is what your body is, my body is. And if you get into quantum physics, the physics below the material world in the deep energetic levels, they've shown this to be true. Nothing that we think is physical is actually physical. I'll give you an example. We are told that physicality is created by atoms, right? Atoms are empty. They have no solidity. There's a great phrase that describes it. If, an atom is a nucleus and there's then the electrons flying around the nucleus. That's what an atom is. It has no solidity. And as someone said, if you take the nucleus to be the size of a 10-cent piece, then the atom would be the size of a baseball stadium. And virtually everything inside an atom is, quote, empty space. You go into the nucleus and you go into the electrons and it's the same thing. It's empty space. How can empty space create a physical world? It can't, because it's all a freaking illusion decoded by the mind.
How do we explain pain then? If you was to punch me in the nose, that's a physical act and I'm going to feel the force of that and it's going to hurt.
Very, very good question, which can be explained because...
I'm not encouraging you do punch me in the face.
No. I'm not violent. Give me 10 minutes. There are now pain relief techniques, which I came across when my son Gareth was in hospital with a broken leg, and I was chatting to the doctor, and he said, well, we're going to try to do this because these are new pain relief techniques. And what it was they take the point of the pain, in this case your chin, right? And they stop the signal going from the point of impact to the brain. Because only when that signal happens do you say, ouch, because the brain is decoding the signal into the pain. And
you sure that weren't morphine?
Pain is, like everything else, it's a frequency signal which the brain decodes. And it's if we go on in terms of the shape shifting, therefore, I'm looking at you, and I am subconsciously, it's all in a non-conscious way, decoding your energetic information field into what I see as a human, because you are encoded with a human energy field. These hybrids have a human energy field, and they have a non-human energy field, often reptilian, but not always, nothing like. They seem to be a dominant force. And most of the time, they are projecting the human field. So you look at them, and you see a human. And what's happening when people see shape-shifting, and, when people started telling me about this as I traveled around the world, I didn't say, oh, they're shape-shifting reptilians. No, you go, okay, that's interesting, bloody far out, but interesting. And you put it on the back burner and you think, well, I'll see what else comes. And eventually enough common themes have repeated around the world for you to cross the line and say, I'm going to go with this because this seems to be happening. So when the non-human energy field becomes the dominant one, and often it does in things like satanic rituals. So many people taking part in satanic rituals, often against their will, have told me about seeing this shape-shifting phenomenon there, as well as in everyday life, though it's obviously not it's not common, but it's more common than people realize. Suddenly, I'm looking at you, and now your human field has been overridden by your non-human field. Now, as I decode your field into human and the dominant level of your field becomes non-human, to me, as I look at you, you have shifted physically into a non-human form. But you haven't. It's all in the decoding processes of the brain. What's happened is there's been an energetic information field shift, and therefore I've decoded an apparently physical shift that actually is an illusion.
Is there a chance that I'm a reptile and I don't even know it?
Well, it's interesting. One of the most profound parts of the brain...
Because I'd be very upset if I am a reptile.
Well...
Especially if I didn't know it.
First of all, the answer for lots of people is yes. But a lot of people really don't realize this as they laugh at things that I've said over the years. One of the most profound parts of the human brain that impacts fundamentally on human behavior is known by science as the reptilian brain, or the R complex. And it's this bit down the back, from the center down the back, the brainstem. And that's where, if you notice in the Matrix movies, that thing went in the back. That was right in the middle of the reptilian brain. And the reptilian brain is about survival. So it's constantly scanning the environment for threats to survival, not just physical survival. The reptilian brain is activated by, I pay the freaking rent at the end of the month. What about my relationship? Is she gonna throw me out? All these things. Am I going to keep my job? What do you think the boss is going to do at the end of the month? Do you think he's going to fire me? This is all reptilian brain. Road rage. When you bastard.
Oh, I'm definitely a reptile then.
That's the activation of the reptilian brain. It's a fundamental impact on human behavior.
Before I forget.
The longer I've gone on, the more I don't think that's an accident that we have that.
Well, here's the thing. So you mentioned the Matrix. So do you think that our human reality is a false simulation like the Matrix?
Yeah, exactly.
So we're living in the Matrix?
Yeah. Like I said right at the start, I've been through this sequence, and at every stage, okay, I think I got this, but what don't I know? And this is the sequence it's taken me through. There is a global network of secret societies that are driving human dystopia. Behind that, answering to that, is a non-human force. Then this reality is a simulation. It's very much, when the Matrix movies came out, especially the first one, it was like a breath of fresh air to me, because I thought, here's a visual expression of how I'm seeing it. And I said just after the turn of the millennium that I felt that this was a simulated reality, and simulated for what? To control our perceptions, for reasons that I'm sure we'll come to.
So does that mean nothing really matters then? If you get your heart broken, it doesn't matter, it's not real. Do you know what I mean?
Well, when we get into why a bit later maybe, why the simulation was created, all those things will become very clear. So I said just after this turn of the millennium that I felt we were in a simulation, and that the human level of the simulation was pretty much the speed of light. So the speed of light appears to be the fastest speed that it's possible. It's not, but it appears to be from a science point of view. When actually it's basically the limit of this human level of the simulation. So what I did then is I looked around for anyone else that was saying it. And I found only one guy who was saying it in the public arena. It was a guy called Nick Bostrom, a professor then at Oxford University, who was saying that there's a very good chance this is a simulation. And in his view, it was possibly created by humans in the future, all that stuff. I don't see it like that at all, but I do agree it's a simulation. And I said that I felt the speed of light was the limit at this level of it, or one of the limits. And then from about 2016, mainstream scientists started kicking in and saying, well, this does look like it's a simulation. And not only that, if it is, it suddenly makes so much sense that doesn't make sense otherwise in physics and what have you. There was a guy called Rich Terrell. He worked at NASA in the computer area of NASA. And he came out in the papers in 2016-17 and said that he felt that this was a simulation, a holographic simulation, which is what I said years and years before, and that what we call physicality is actually holographic. You see where holographic technology has gone now. And that if it's a simulation, then it's clearly not natural, is it? So some form of intelligence had to create it. And this has gone on now. There's another guy called Silas Bean. He led he's a physicist. He led a team at the University of Bonn to investigate, is this a simulation? And he and his team came to the conclusion that it probably was. They even proposed that it was probably based on some kind of cube matrix, and that we wouldn't know about it as we experienced it. And then you've got a guy called Max Tegmark at MIT who wrote a book, Our Mathematical Universe, I think it was called. And he was pointing out, not that it was a simulation, but what he was pointing out was that everything can be broken down to mathematics and numbers. This whole reality can be broken down into mathematics and numbers. And, he was pointing out that, if you were in a computer game and, once again, what we call virtual reality computer games are mirroring the reality we're experiencing, and in many ways using the same senses to give us the illusion of the game. He was pointing out that if you're in a computer game, you wouldn't know you were in a computer game. To you, it would be real. But just like a computer game can be broken down into numbers and coding, so can our reality. And he made this point. He said the physics of computer games, virtual reality computer games, and the physics of our reality is the same. And what's gone on since then, there's a guy at Portsmouth University, a physicist, who was in the papers 2023, 2024, saying that he has concluded we're in a simulation. He wrote a book of his papers. And interestingly, he said, and its foundation is information. Now, that's what I was saying at the turn of the millennium, that this simulation is just like Wi-Fi, it's an information field which we're decoding. And thus, because let me put it this way. You know, if you go on the internet, like a video platform, and you put in words to the effect of compilation of people doing silly things while a headset's on or in a computer game, you find these videos, and what happens is they put a headset on. Now, they might be in an empty room. Well, obviously there's a cameraman as well, but there's just a room. Normal reality. They put the headset on. Within seconds, their sense of reality, their sense of perception is transformed. They're screaming, they're falling off their chair, they're running away, they're in an emotional state in reacting to what they're seeing. And imagine this is a biological computer. This is a headset, symbolically, and it's decoding this matrix field of information into the appearance and the experience of a virtual reality. You enter the body, you enter the womb, and as the body forms, your headset is forming. You come out of the womb, and everyone, your parents and everyone, your siblings, they're all wearing symbolic headsets because they're decoding the same matrix as you are. And so everyone's agreed that this reality is real when without the headset, it wouldn't be anything like it is. So you go through your life, and everyone is wearing headsets. You put the teacher, you go to school, and the teacher wearing a headset, telling you what's real and what's not. You turn the television on. Hello, good evening and welcome. This is the news. Bloke wearing a headset. And they're all decoding the same fake reality. And then we come to this point where you take the headset off. And the only way you can take the headset off, and that's what we call death. So what happens at death? The biological computer ceases to function, ceases to decode the matrix field. And if you, and I've done this, my God, I've watched and read so many of these so-called near-death experiences that people have had with enormous, phenomenal common themes. And they say that when the body dies, ceases to decode the matrix, and they find themselves in a completely different reality with a completely different law of physics and everything. And then the body is revived and they find themselves back in the body and back in this reality. And that's all death is. It's the body, the vehicle to experience this reality, which is then ceasing to function. So you're on the internet on your computer and the screen goes blank. What do we say? My computer's died. Exactly. It ceased to decode the Wi-Fi.
Does it reboot again, though? Is there life after death? Or is there a new matrix after death?
Well, you see, this is another interesting thing. You know, I said I got to the point where I could see that this was a simulation. And it's becoming more and more confirmed all the time. The next stage was this question, because what you do when you work on the basis of, well, this is what I think I know, but what else is there to know? You should keep asking fricking questions. So my question was, okay, I'm saying that our true state is one of a formless state of consciousness. We are a state of being aware. The question is how aware. So you can take on a physical body and you can experience your awareness, can experience this reality through this. Otherwise, I couldn't pick that up. My consciousness, your consciousness, everyone's consciousness is vibrating so fast. There's not it's not within anything like the frequency band of this so-called physical world. So I couldn't pick that up. So I take on an external body shell, which is resonating within the frequency band that I want to experience, and then I can pick that up, right? Okay, I've traveled the world a lot till I started getting banned from all these countries. And the vast majority of people in this world are not having a good time. In fact, they're having a freaking awful time. They're trying to survive another day in South America, in Africa, in Asia, Central America, but also massively in the West as well. And this was my question. Okay, I can understand how maybe consciousness could be manipulated into this reality once. But once you've kind of left the body and been freed from it, why the frickin' hell would you come back? Why would you do that? I mean, you go, well, gee, I ain't going back there again. It's a shithole, that place. Wouldn't you? Most people. So then I started looking into the afterlife. I started looking at these near-death experiences. I also came across people, again, with tremendous common themes who said they could remember their incarnation process, some of their between life, other dimensional experience, and then coming into the body. And I say the common themes, and one of the common themes is how freaking dense this reality is. It's what they all say. When I was coming into this reality, as one said, the frequency, the density, it got lower, 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 and then lower, 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 and lower, 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 to the point where it's really hard to experience. And that kind of gives you a feel for how we need to look at ourselves as humans and say, actually, we're in such a challenging environment, such a challenging energetic environment. We need to be a bit kinder to ourselves and realize we are in a seriously challenging situation. So they talk about, and I talked to these people and read their accounts, and millions of bloody near-death accounts now. And I came to the conclusion a long time ago that reincarnation is real. The reincarnation of consciousness, not the reincarnation of the body, it just dies and disappears. Reincarnation of consciousness in and out of this reality in so-called different lives. And these people that can remember their between life, if you like, between human life experience, they talk about how detailed it is deciding what you're going to do next or what you're going to experience next in the human world. Because I started to realize that this matrix, this simulation, is not just the human level. There's another level of it, which is known in esoteric circles as the astral level. And the Buddhists have this concept of the wheel of samsara, where you keep leaving the human level of what I would say is the simulation, and you go into this astral level, and you keep coming back, and it's like, round and round forever. And as I looked at these accounts of near-death experiences of going up the tunnel to the light at the end, or following the light, or whatever, and the common themes were kind of the massive. Like, if they were a Christian, they would maybe see Jesus. If they were a Muslim, they might see a Muslim figure, a Hindu figure, right? So, right, and if you're a Christian, and suddenly someone who looks like Jesus, and by the way, there is nothing in the Bible that describes Jesus, and the figure we call Jesus, the image we call Jesus, was Renaissance artists who decided that's what he was, right?
Could you not astral project yourself back in time to see what he looked like?
Well, did he look like anything is the question. The point, the astral projection is something
that's interesting.
Is very relevant, and I'll come to that in a sec, because that comes to why is the Matrix created in the first place.
Because my cousin told me that he could astral project one day. And, I just thought, you fucking madman.
No, there's people that can skillfully do it.
Can you do it?
I will come to that. Well, I mean, I don't go into the astral and see it, but what I've done ever since my head blew off in 1990 is, and this whole new life opened up, is I go into massive coma sleeps. I mean, just coma sleeps, often in the middle of the bloody day. And it's been going on since about 1990. And when I wake up, and sometimes it can take me half an hour to come around, I kind of know things I didn't know before. So, take that as you will. But what I was looking at with these near-death experiences and these common themes is that they were seeing religious figures or that related to their belief, that they were seeing maybe loved ones or whatever. And if you're a Christian, like I say, and you see the figure you recognize as Jesus, I say they're projections, but it's all in the book, you're going to follow him. Of course you're going to follow him. You've been programmed to follow him here. If you see a figure you relate to Islam and you're a Muslim, you're going to follow him, aren't you, up the tunnel. And then the common theme is that they go into this life review, right? And often this life review is held and overseen by what they call elders. This is common theme, constant. And they're in the robes and they have the long white beard and they're wizened, wise old men. Well, hold on a minute. In the astral, there is no aging. It's a completely different level of reality. The aging is something that relates to this simulated level of the matrix we call human. So why wizened old men? Because what are we programmed to believe here in the human world before we leave? That wizened old men are a symbol of wisdom. So these wizened old men then tell these near-death experience people that they still have lessons to learn. It's their karma. Karma, a load of old bollocks. It's their karma. And therefore, you've got to go back, and this is what these people that can remember their between life experience talk about, that the next life is decided and worked out on the basis of what they still have to learn, right? And what I saw was that the human world and this astral world have enormous common themes. And one of them is giving your power away to authority. So in the human world, people are giving their power away to authority all the time. Yes, sir, no, sir. Go and fight this group. Yes, I'll go and fight them. Oh, and you fight them. Oh, yeah. Authorities told us we've got to go and fight. We've got to have a war and all that stuff. And then when you get into the astral realm, you are presented with authority figures. Might be a religious hero. It might be a wizened, wise old man. And they tell you that you've got to come back to learn lessons for your evolution. Load of old bollocks. Right. So you're on this wheel of samsara and you keep going round. So the next question, why? What's the frickin' point of creating this illusory reality and then creating this reincarnation stuff? And by the way, on the reincarnation thing, there have been psychologists, there's one I quote in the book called Ian Stevenson, no longer with us, but he did a lot of research into reincarnation in the sense that young kids, most people remember nothing about previous lives because just as an aside, it's not really an aside, it's important. When these people say they remember their incarnation process, they talk about coming in through a electromagnetic field that wipes their memory. Now, it doesn't completely wipe everyone's memory, but in the sense of these young kids, they usually stop remembering previous lives by the age of 7, 8 to 10. So he was looking at these really young kids, and he set out to debunk it. I'm going to show that they don't know what they're talking about, and it's all in their mind. So these kids, lots of them in different parts of the world, were describing in great detail a previous life. They were describing places that they in this life had never been. They were describing buildings and how they were laid out, buildings that they'd never been in. And they were presenting real fine detail of a previous life. And some of them were talking about a previous life in which people that were part of that life were still alive. There's one incident. He's got this little kid who's claiming that he was married to some woman who's now obviously much older. And so they're taking the kid to the house for this interaction. And he said the funny thing was the child was talking to the now much older previous wife, as he claimed, as if she was still his wife. He's just a little kid. And they said in the end, the family, look, if what you say is true, where's your bloody will? We've never been able to find your will. And this kid walked over to a place on the kitchen floor, pointed to it. They took the floorboard up, and there was the fucking will. And so this guy wrote thousands of papers on, and a whole book on trying to debunk these people, but he couldn't. And so I concluded a long time ago that reincarnation was real. The question is, as I say, why? What's it all about? What's the reason? Well, and this actually will also explain why satanic ritual and why human sacrifice ritual, why it's been going on from the ancient world and is still going on in secret now. There was a guy called Robert Monroe, and coming back to what you mentioned earlier, he was a very skilled astral traveler. For people who haven't come across this, astral traveling is the ability to project your consciousness, as your mate said, project your consciousness into this astral dimension, not as a near-death experience, but while you're very bodily still alive, but you project it into the astral dimension. And you can experience the astral and what have you. Now, he became very skilled. He wrote a series of books. He was a media executive, actually, he started out. He wrote many books and popularized this astral traveling phenomenon. And he became so skilled at it that the US military got involved. The psychological part of the US military. And they did a study. It was called Gateway. And what they did was, and the CIA declassified the report some years ago now. They got together other people who had this ability to astral travel, to project their consciousness into this other dimension that's very close to this one. And the study was, well, what did they experience? And are there any common themes of what they claim to experience? Well, first of all, these people, these astral projectors in the Gateway study, they came across so many reptilian entities in the astral dimension that the study gave them the name the alligators. Oh, I've seen some more alligators, right? And what Robert Monroe said, and this is confirmed by others too, is that he learned in his astral travels over many, many, many years that these entities are feeding off human energy. But it's a particular type of human energy, low vibrational human energy, which relates to fear, hatred, anxiety, depression, regret, remorse, all of it, all these low vibrational energies that bring us down, that are the result of events in the world and our lives that give us this emotional kind of turmoil. And they're feeding off it. And when you again do the research into in mainstream science, every time we feel emotion and every time we think, we're generating a frequency. And that frequency relates to the nature of the emotion and the nature of the thought. So joy, happiness, peace, appreciation, everyone getting on, is a high vibrational energy. No good to these entities. They want the low vibrational energy because they're in a low vibrational state or they wouldn't do what they're doing. So in simple terms, these creators of this illusory reality have no interest in a world of love, a world of joy, a world of happiness, a world of peace, none of it. They want to constantly, through their global cult network, to constantly create events, wars, suffering, anything that would generate low vibrational emotional and mental energy, because they're feeding off it. And they have created this matrix specifically to hijack human perception in this low vibrational state. The more wars there are, the better from their point of view. The more upheavals there are, the more suffering there are, the more distress there is, the more you're trying to survive another week. Oh my God. All this stuff is giving off the energy that they want. And Robert Monroe gave this energy a name. He called it Loosh. And there's a chapter in the roadmap called Loosh Farm, which explains all this. So when I started putting together this global cult network in the early 1990s, I started to notice that these frickers were taking part in satanic ritual and pedophilia. What? Why? What's the common theme here? And then I realized, hold on a minute. In the ancient world, they were openly sacrificing people as a gift to the gods, and you then remember, but they were sacrificing what they called young virgins to the gods. What are young virgins code for? Children. And overwhelmingly, these people today are sacrificing kids.
Who are they? That's the million-dollar question.
These cultists. And these cultists, that these inner circle of the cult and others further out too, they are answering to these perceived gods. They're not. They're a bunch of frickin' prats, but they're perceived as gods. And they were perceived as gods in the ancient world.
But can we identify these cultists? Are there a specific family group, someone that we can actually put a name and a face to?
If you can see them, they're gophers, right? They might be powerful gophers, they might be rich gophers, but they're still gophers, right? The real power is in the shadows and keeps itself in the shadows. It doesn't want to be seen. And then the deeper shadows, you're into another dimension.
Do you know who these people are in the deeper shadows, though?
Well, it's very difficult to identify people who constantly remain in the shadows, but you can start to identify those at the high gopher level. So you're looking at the House of Rothschild for a start. It used to be called Bauer, then changed the name to Rothschild. You're talking about the Rockefellers in America, but there are many of these interbreeding families.
So and the big rich families you think are sacrificing children?
Absolutely. Is everyone in the families and all of the families doing it? Probably not, no. But are some of them fundamentally doing it? Absolutely.
And have you got any evidence? Hardcore, concrete evidence of that?
It's all in the books over the last 36 years. There's one called The Perception Deception, which is about that thick. You think that's a big book?
Give me a brief example of evidence that I can walk away with today so that I can tell people, no, I know that's true. I know they're sacrificing children.
Well, I've talked to people all over the world who've taken part in the rituals and have named the people to me who were taking part in the rituals, including the British royal family. That comes up regularly in the days of the Queen and Prince Philip and stuff. Ask yourself this. Jimmy Savile is obviously known now as a mega historic level paedophile. He was also exposed, as I said he would be when the paedophilia came out, as being a Satanist who took part in satanic ritual, right? He loved having sex with dead bodies. That's why he was a porter at the Leeds Hospital as a volunteer. And he loved drinking blood, right? This is what we're dealing with. And so what you do is when Jimmy Savile is exposed, you say, okay, well, we can't stop it all coming out, but we're going to stop most of it coming out, the bit we don't really want people to see. So you keep it at he was a paedophile and all that stuff. But you don't go further out. And this is all in my books in detail.
And we know he was a necrophiliac, don't we?
Yeah, and he was someone who, as I called him in one book, a gateway to the cesspit, just as Epstein is a gateway to the cesspit, which is why they're trying to keep that Epstein door closed. And they've worked to keep the Jimmy Savile door closed beyond the fact we've got to accept he was a paedophile, mega paedophile. Well, a couple of things. First of all, as I say in my books over the years in great detail.
And how many books have you wrote?
Nearly 30.
Incredible.
He was not just a mega paedophile. He was a procurer and supplier of children for the rich and famous.
This is Savile.
Savile. That's why the police knew what he was doing, right? But did nothing. He was never collared for it. And then look at this. He said himself that he was introduced and brought into the inner circle of the British royal family in the 1960s by a known paedophile from the inner circle of the royal family called Lord Mountbatten. And he became, Savile, very close to Prince Charles and very close to Prince Philip before him and Philip had a big falling out. And he remained a close friend of Prince, now King Charles, to the end of his life, Savile. He died in 2011. Now, just hold on a second. You know, I've seen films where someone has been planning to protest against the Queen, like on a royal visit, and they arrive, apparently, you know, not going to protest, and the police come up to them and say, we know what you've come to do, right? So they know that kind of detail about what's going on around the royal family. But they didn't know that Jimmy Savile was a mega historic paedophile decade after decade after decade. Of course they did. Do you think Special Branch didn't know? The Royal Protection Unit didn't know? Of course they bloody knew. But he stayed in the inner circle. And I met a lady, she was a close friend and acknowledged in the papers as a close friend of Princess Diana for 9 years. And I'd been over to America, where in a period of about 15 days, I'd met 12 different people in different cities and locations who told me the same story. One of the things that's happened to me since I went through my head-blowing experience in 1990 is that a subject will come into my life and suddenly information on that subject, which has just appeared in my life, will come to me from all angles. So this was really the point when the whole reptilian thing came in. I started meeting these people in this 15-day period who said they'd seen someone appear to be human, change into a reptilian form, and then go back again. So I'd arranged to meet somebody when I got back who said that she knew about Satanism because she'd been brought up in it and all that stuff. So I go and meet her. And she tells me about her experiences in Satanism. And she tells me that for a time she was married to a bloke who was a warden of something called Burnham Beeches in the west of London, which is an area of forests and copse and clearings and etc. And she lived in there. And she told me the story of going out at night. She realized eventually that her husband was orchestrating the Satanism in that area. She goes out one night, she says, and it's dark, and she's walking through the trees, and she sees a kind of a light. So she walks forward and she's looking through the trees. And there is a circle of Satanists in the robes. And leading the ritual is Ted Heath, the Prime Minister of Britain who took us into the European Union. And next to him is his Chancellor of the Exchequer of the time. And she told me about the ritual and what she saw up to a point. And she told me everything else that she kind of knew about what her experiences were. And I'm drinking a cup of tea. And I just finished my tea. And I said, well, it's amazing what you're telling me. Bloody hell. I mean, what's going on? So I put my tea down and I said, well, nice to meet you. I'll see you. And I turned around. And as I was turning, I said, I've had some strange experiences. I said, while I'm in America, people were telling me they'd seen people turn into reptiles, right? And as I turned, all I could hear her doing was like that. And I turned around and she's holding her chest. She said, oh, my God. She said, I weren't going to tell you that. And she told me how she had seen during this ritual Ted Heath, during the ritual, transform into a non-human form. And she said, first of all, once he was in his non-human form, she said, he started talking not like Heath, but like the old transatlantic telephone lines where you had those big breaks between words, you know. It was basically like that. And she said the other thing that amazed me was I'm there like, what am I seeing? She said the rest of the circle was like the most natural thing in the world. There was no reaction at all. It's like, this is how it is. We've done this many times. And so I then came across this lady not long afterwards who was a close friend of Diana for 9 years. And she came to see me on the Isle of Wight. I've still got the interviews. Those old audio tapes. They were reel to reel.
You have to mend them with a bit of sellotape if they snap.
Yeah, all that stuff. Yeah. One of them. Anyway, they lured her in. She said Diana used to describe herself as the Windsor's brood mare. They'd drawn her in because they wanted her genetics. And the moment they had the genetics with the boys, she was out and didn't last long after that, if you remember. And Charles went back to the person he was with all the time, really, Camilla.
Do you think King Charles could be a satanic paedophile?
Do I think the royal family is involved in Satanism? Yes, I do. Am I saying that every last member of them is? No, I'm not. But key members are. And anyway, she told me these things, and they're all in my books in detail. And I had not said a word to her about anything that I'd experienced in America and this whole reptilian thing. I had not said a word. And then she said to me, you know the royal family of reptilian? And I played the idiot, you know. What are you talking about? I'm thinking, shit, not another reptilian, you know. And she said, yeah, they're reptilian. They're a hybrid bloodline. And they can move between human and reptilian, a reptilian state. And that's what I've been saying over the years and getting great ridicule for it. But I'm saying it because I've heard it from so many different sources that it's well long ago crossed my line that this is actually real.
But we've never had that caught on camera, have we? We've never seen it with our own eyes.
Well, no, because obviously you don't shift in a public situation. But what I do in a number of my books, I think I include it in the roadmap, is describe what she said to me in detail. I then came across in the United States a lady who said that she was conducting satanic rituals, and she was under mind control. She was part of this MK Ultra stuff, and they often use mind control for people who conduct the rituals, because then they don't remember. They have compartmentalized minds, and they'll conduct a ritual but have no memory of it once they mess with their minds again. But some people, and I've come across a lot of them really over the years, these compartments in the mind that hold these, they call them in the mind control trade altered states. What they do is they break the mind up into compartmentalized sections, a bit like a honeycomb, basically. And each of these honeycombs is programmed with a certain personality and a certain role, and they are then pushed back into the subconscious, and they give them what's called a front altar. The front altar is what they think is them, and what anyone interacting with them in normal life will think is them.
Is this the third eye theory?
No, it's not that. It's a compartment of the mind, and it's called in the mind control trade the front altar. Now, what then happens is these back altars, as they're called, with different roles, are programmed with activation codes. It might be a phrase, it might be a word, it could be anything that they program in. And when they give them those codes, the front altar goes into the subconscious, and the back altar that's been activated comes out. Now they're a completely different personality. They can be abused sexually or violently by the rich and famous. And when it's experienced, or they can, in this woman's case, conduct satanic rituals, and then when it's over, they put the front altar or the activated altar back in the subconscious, that bring the front altar forward. The front altar has no memory or awareness of what they've been doing. Now, I was researching this in enormous frickin' detail, both sides of the Atlantic and elsewhere, come to that, from about 1996 to across the millennium. I became very, very au fait with how this whole thing works. And but what can happen is that eventually the walls of these honeycombed altars start to collapse. And when they do, memories flood into the conscious mind. At first, they think they're going crazy, but gradually they realize they are memories of what actually happened and what they've done. And this lady, who was conducting rituals for them, was talking about all these people that were in the rituals that she was conducting, including members of the British royal family. And she describes what the Queen, what the old Queen Mother, the nation's grandmother, butter wouldn't melt, and others look like in a shape-shifted state, because she was describing how during these satanic rituals they do with all the blood and everything, they go freaking crazy, and then they shapeshift. They shapeshift into it. But of course, it's in a closed situation where they are among like people.
You're not a royalist then?
Oh, I think I can fairly say I'm not. No. And by the way, never have been.
You've convinced me.
never have been since I was a kid. I thought, hold on, I was only a little kid. I thought, what do you mean? They're head of state. Why? And if you put it down to basics, they're head of state because of who had sex with who in what frickin' order. It's ludicrous, right? What are we doing, people? Anyway, but the royal bloodlines through a long period were the ones running the shows in the different countries, right? And it was controlled by royal succession. In other words, the same bloodlines would take over the monarchy. And these royal bloodlines, if you go back and go all over the world, they have always incessantly interbred, and they are described as having the divine right to rule. All right, the monarchy, the divine right to rule. But nothing divine about it. Their right to rule is because of their connection to these serpent gods, as some cultures call them. And so when people reached a point of maturity, we've still not got there in Britain, mind, it started to reject royal control. And said, "Oh, we want to run the show. We want the people to be in control, not the royals." They created politics, and politics was just another way of getting people to give their power away to the control system.
The control system being the elite cult.
The origin of and control starts with this astral dimension, and these entities in the astral dimension comes down into our reality via this cult, which is why these cultists are doing satanic rituals to the gods, the same as the ancients were.
Have you ever been considered a cult leader?
You must be joking. I work alone. I've always worked alone. I'm not interested in working.
But your following is huge now.
How many times I have said over the years, and I say it again, don't follow me. Don't follow anyone. Follow your frickin' self. Follow your own thoughts. Follow your own instincts. But make sure that before you form perceptions, you're looking at all possibility and not just the possibilities that you're given.
Let me tell you why I said that. And this is, remember I said to you outside before we come in here, I've got a secret to tell you.
Go on then.
So I'll have to incorporate a question. So see this T-shirt? It's turquoise.
Yeah.
This is purposefully chosen and worn today.
Right.
Do you know why I wore that today?
Well, when my head blew off in 1990, what basically happened was this. You know, if you're minding your own business, you're getting on with your life, and then you've got a certain perception of reality. You're kind of in a bit of a bubble, like, you know. And then someone comes along and pops the bubble. And suddenly concepts, thoughts, perceptions start pouring into your conscious mind that weren't there before. And you know, if you press too many keys on a computer, it freezes. It's I can't process this information. Too much. And that's what it was like for 3 months. And that's what people remember about me. In the middle of that 3 months was the Wogan show, right? So they remember about me that he went crazy. And you know, in many ways I did, in the sense that There was so much information, couldn't process it. Then after about 3 months, the computer unfroze. And I could see the world in a completely different way. And people were coming up to me and they're saying, I thought you'd gone mad. You're like the old Dave I knew. And I was outwardly, but I wasn't inside, because I could see things that I couldn't see before. I could see between the lines, not just the lines.
Would you call it a spiritual awakening?
I suppose you'd call it that, yeah. An awakening from the program, I guess, although you awaken from the program and then you awaken more from the program. It's not just you awaken and that's it. It's a process as well. And in that 3 months, I became obsessed with that. Turquoise.
So you see, I took the positive from that interview.
Yeah.
So what I took from it
But I'm not obsessed with it now, and I wasn't obsessed with it 3 months later. But in that period, I was, yeah.
Yeah, so I want to talk to you about the two Wogan interviews.
Right.
Because I said to you, you've got a great following, and you said, don't follow me. And I just want to sort of expand on your popularity that I've noticed. So I focused on when Wogan mentioned, you wearing turquoise. Turquoise is the colour. And you said, well, yeah, because it attracts light and peace and happiness and joy compared to other colours.
I do like it, by the way.
So this is purposely worn for you out of as a mark of respect.
Thank you very much.
So this was purposely worn today because I remember that you said that turquoise attracts positive energy.
Yeah.
Now, during that interview, and you also mentioned earlier, because I know I've laughed back and forth. I've not been laughing at you, by the way, but just a few things we've said have been funny, and you're a fucking good character. But there was this time where Wogan said to you, they're not laughing with you, they're laughing at you. And you addressed the audience and you said, well, you can laugh at me all you like. I'm just telling you what I've experienced, to that tune.
Yeah.
So the first interview you had with him, the audience laughed at you. 16 years later, you then returned to the show, and his own audience at the end laughed at him.
Yeah.
He said that America's become a free state,
Yeah.
and you corrected him and you put your very smart spin on it, and it ended up with his own audience laughing at him, and then he wrapped the interview up real quick.
Yeah. That was a very...
How did that feel?
That was a very cathartic moment. It was almost like a cycle had come to an end, because in the middle of that 3 months of... If you'd have asked me my name in that 3 months, I'd have had to frickin' check, right? It was like crazy. And in the middle of it was the Wogan interview. So I'm doing the interview, but I'm not kind of here. And I'll tell you a funny story. While I'm sitting in the Wogan chair and he's throwing his questions at me, and by the way, that thing, quote, they're not laughing with you, they're laughing at you. He'd used that a few weeks earlier on a Icke he had on, exactly the same phrase.
That was his patter.
So I thought, well, I've heard that before. But while I'm talking to him, and of course, very early on in the interview, and for a Wogan interview, it was a long interview. And of course, for people around the world who don't know about the Wogan, the Wogan interview program, he had fantastic audiences. It was early evening, prime time. They all started laughing really early on. And I'm kind of dying inside because I'm thinking, this is not going well and all that stuff.
You said you were the son of the Godhead, didn't you?
Yeah, but what I was saying is we're all expressions of one infinite consciousness. That's what I was really saying. It wasn't a religious thing. But anyway, what happened is while this is all going on, there was something in my mind that was saying to me,
Wogan's a lizard.
No, it was saying, it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. Keep going. This is going somewhere. And of course, at that moment, you think, I know where it's going. Down the frickin' toilet, right? But it has gone somewhere.
But you held your own.
Eventually.
You didn't buckle. Despite the fact he was putting pressure on you to make you look silly, you still remained staunch.
Well, this is the thing, Liam, you see.
And my takeaway was the positive message you brought with you.
Well, the vast majority of people are living in a prison, and it's called fear of what other people think. Now, if you fear what other people think, you're not living your life anymore. You're living their version of what you should be. So if you fear what other people think, you're not going to go out side of what they think is credible and sensible and normal, because your interest is keeping them thinking you're okay, right? Now, I don't give a shit what people think of me. It's of no interest. I just want to know what the hell this place is, how it works, and why so many people in the human race are having shit lives generation after generation after generation, why there's constant conflict, war, and deprivation. What the fuck is going on? That's what I want to know. And as I explore that, what people think of me is freaking irrelevant. You know, I mean, these people on, things like X, oh, that's told him. Right? Well, you haven't. I don't give a shit, right? So you've wasted your time, mate. Take a break from your mum's back bedroom, That's vitally important.
So was that second interview like a, yes, it's all been worth it? Because it ended very abruptly because the irony is, and it's funny that you say that, you shouldn't care what other people think about you, because you clearly didn't. And I like Wogan, by the way, but just those two encounters you had with him, he was affected by what people thought of him, because as soon as they started laughing at him, he went, right, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. David Icke, and he finished the interview really quick. I watched them both last night. That's why they're so fresh in my head.
Yeah.
Satisfying?
I cannot tell you what a freedom it is to open your mouth and say what you think without and you're not saying, this is what I think, you must believe it. You're saying, this is what I think, and this is what I've researched. And not have that mental gymnastics constantly going on in your head. How do I put this so they'll think I'm credible? How can I put this, or what can I leave out so they don't think I'm mad?
You almost go the other way. Have you ever taken any mind-altering drugs?
Once, in 2003, I took ayahuasca in a Brazilian rainforest.
How did your mind find that?
Well, that was an extraordinary thing, because I'd written a book. It was exposing 9/11 as the nonsense story the official narrative is.
I'll have to get your take on that before we finish this interview.
I wrote another one later in great detail called The Trigger about 9/11 in 2019. It just blows the whole thing apart. Anyway, so I said to people when I was writing that book, I said, if I'm going to go to the next level, I've got to get out there. Not in some bloody dream. I've got to get out there in a conscious way to see what's beyond this place, So trying to get a feel for what's this part of. And literally within days, I get this invitation to go to a Brazilian rainforest and partake in ayahuasca, which tastes a bit like licorice. So anyway, I go along. And, I'm talking there and a few things, but I could have taken this stuff 4 times. I took it twice. On the second night, I went into this altered state. And it's a funny thing, ayahuasca, because you open your eyes, you're in this realm, you're in this reality. You close your eyes, you're in another reality. The thing is, your eyes don't want to stay open. You can open your eyes. Oh, yeah, it's just like, but they don't want to stay open. They want to close. And when you close, you're in another reality. And this voice started talking to me. It took a female form. It's just a frequency, which I decoded as female in here. And it started to tell me over a period of 5 hours the illusory nature of human reality. And now it's all an illusion. We're living in an illusory reality. And it went into great detail. And when it was over, I had instant recall of what it said. So I come back to Britain and I start researching the different scientific disciplines, including quantum physics, to see if there was a human scientific credibility to what I'd been told in that 5 hours. And what I've realized is there's all these scientific disciplines, not least quantum physics, but they don't talk to each other. In fact, they compete with each other for prominence and for funding and stuff. And you realize that if you put the pieces together, they've already established this is a freaking illusory reality, but they don't talk to each other. So they've got a bit, and they've got a bit, and they've got a bit, but they don't talk to each other. But it was there, and I found confirmation of what that voice told me in the rainforest in the early, after the millennium, the same time that this whole matrix thing started to appear in my mind as I'm sure this is what it is. Because the illusory part of human reality suddenly made freaking sense of the matrix. And so I did experience that, but I've never experienced it since because I don't need to, because I got what I wanted, and now you can research it with your conscious mind without going into some altered state.
You had the female in your ear.
Yeah?
You spoke about AI long before AI come about, or certainly the majority of the public knew about AI, and you spoke about mind control. So when you think where AI could take us, is there a chance that we could lose complete control of our own minds and be dictated to completely by artificial intelligence?
100%. That's the idea.
Which is extremely frightening.
And we're years from it if we don't wake the hell up. And this is why I've been so critical of the mainstream of the alternative media since COVID. When a lot of mainstream people have come in, they have squeezed the arena that's considered the conspiracy, when the real conspiracy is on the other side of the barricades they're sticking up. So where do I start with this? Because it's a massive subject. So
I suppose highlight the downfall, because a lot of people are buying into it because it's quick and easy to get yourself go chat GPT and Grok, for example. People are mad for it, but I don't think they realise the downside of it.
Okay. So we are consciousness having a human experience. In the astral dimension, the body we experience that dimension with, some people call the soul. What we really are is a state of awareness beyond the matrix. We are a state of infinite awareness beyond the matrix. What the matrix is there to do is to focus our attention and our perception within the matrix, because
to keep us in line.
Yeah, well, keep us in the matrix. So every time, like I said earlier, every time we think and feel, we are generating a frequency. So what we call the perceptual field, who we are, how we see life, how we see ourselves, self-identity, is actually a frequency field based on our perceptions of reality. So they have to keep us perceptually within the frequency band of this matrix simulation. Because once you start to expand your awareness outside of the matrix, you're tapping into that level which is not controlled, which can see what this place is, and suddenly you're getting knowledge, you're getting insight, you're getting awareness, you're looking at the world and going, whoa, so that's what's going on. Whereas when you're in the matrix and of the matrix, all your information is coming from within the matrix. It's designed to keep you there and to keep you perceptually in a box. Once you expand your awareness outside of the matrix, suddenly you can see things you couldn't see before. Now, that's the foundation of it. So up to this point, the control of perception has been controlled by control of information, okay? So if they can get your perception, they've got your behavior. We behave as we do because we perceive as we do. What we believe, you perceive. What you perceive, you experience. Right. How do you control perception? You control information. So censorship is controlling information. It's saying we're going to emphasize what we want you to believe and how what we want you to believe reality is and yourself and life and all of it and world events. And we're going to do everything we can to keep from you what we don't want you to see. What they want to do, and this is what the AI thing is all about, they want to go to the next level. They want to deliver your perceptions and your thoughts direct. They want to deliver your emotional responses direct. So how do they do that? Well, through electromagnetic fields, you can deliver information. You can encode information in frequent Wi-Fi. You can encode information in electromagnetic fields, which are then decoded by the computer in terms of the Wi-Fi. And what they want to do is create a global electromagnetic field through which they can deliver what is in effect a hive mind, where they are delivering a sense of reality, a sense of perception, perception of self-identity to the entire human race. Now, in the roadmap, I quote a Chinese whistleblower. Some years ago now, he said, the Chinese have already developed a way of using electromagnetic fields to deliver information to the brain. Because we are actually an electromagnetic, at this level, electromagnetic information field that we talked about earlier. And if you can get a technologically generated information field, electromagnetic information field to connect with the human field, you can deliver information and it's processed by the brain. And so then you say, well, wouldn't it be even better if you had a delivery system through this electromagnetic field and you had a receiver system in the body? Well, I'm in touch with people in various parts of the world who have focused on the impact and consequences of the COVID fake vaccine. And I say fake vaccine because it's not a vaccine according to previous criteria. And there's other ways they're trying to get the same stuff in you, not just through vaccines.
5G, that's another one of your theories, isn't it?
I'll come to that because that's an important point in this whole arena I'm talking about. So you have the fake vaccine, and they've started looking in the blood through electron microscopes at the effect on fake vaccinated people. And of course, not everyone had the full-blown jab every time, because you see the number of people who died, especially young people who've died or had heart trouble and have never been the same again. I mean, the number of times, Liam, I hear people say to me, I've never been the same since I had that jab. And what they've seen in the electron microscopes are nanotechnology self-replicating. It's building systems in the blood. And this stuff, for reasons I talk about in the book, is able to cross into the brain, because there's something they call the blood-brain barrier, which is supposed to stop toxins getting into the brain. But they've found a way of tricking it into getting them into the brain. Now, the brain processes information electrically. The whole body is electrical, electromagnetic. And if you can get stuff in the brain that's going to rewire the brain, you're going to rewire the way the brain forms reality or a sense of reality, but you're also going to have receivers to receive the information into the brain, into the body. So we have obviously the 5G towers are and these 6G, 7G in the pipeline, and we have. I mean, when I was born in 1952, the amount of technological radiation in our atmosphere and environment was negligible. Now it's absolutely fantastic, and it's an electromagnetic field that is you are able to pass information through it. Okay. So if you want a global electromagnetic field, you're not going to do it with towers everywhere. Yes, you're going to do it in the cities and you're going to do it in the towns and stuff. You're not going to get everywhere. What you want is low orbit satellites that are going to beam this stuff. And we now have tens of thousands of low orbit satellites launched by people like Elon Musk and SpaceX, and increasingly now coming up in the background is Jeff Bezos and the Amazon system. And they're planning to have vastly more. And you're creating this electromagnetic field. And some people call it the cloud. I mean, there's other levels of the cloud, but this is a massive part of it. And through this cloud, you can deliver information, especially if you've got receiver systems in the body that are going to receive this information. And you're going to think, I'm thinking my thoughts and I'm having an emotional reaction, but it ain't yours, right? It's AI's in effect. And one of the things they've found in these fake vaccine vials, not necessarily all of them, but the potent ones, is something called graphene oxide. Now, graphene oxide is a relatively new phenomenon, but it has two particular attributes, as many, but two particular in this case. One is it's a superconductor of electricity. So you get that in the brain, well, you're going to get messed up. And the number of people, I mean, maybe you've come across it too, but I certainly have. The number of people that have said to me since the COVID jab that people who've had it, that they know they're not the same person anymore. They're not the same person in terms of personality. And so the other thing is that graphene oxide amplifies electromagnetic fields. So if you've got graphene oxide in the body in its nano state, and you come into contact with an electromagnetic field, the impact of that field on your body is going to be exacerbated by the graphene oxide. What you've had is the hard cell and the soft cell of this AI human fusion. The hard cell has come from people like Bill Gates, Klaus Schwab, and all these people who say, oh, yes, we're going to fuse humans with AI and we will be gods. And then you've got the soft cell by Elon Musk. And Elon Musk, if you remember, positioned himself some years ago as the AI skeptic. AI could be the end of humanity. But ever since, and now the X platform is unbelievable. It's an absolute propaganda arm of the AI human fusion, AI control system agenda. He's been pushing AI ever since he said it could be the end of humanity. But his line is, but it's inevitable, keyword, it's inevitable that AI is going to become more intelligent than humans. So if we don't fuse with it, then humans are going to die out. But because I'm the skeptic, I'm aware of it. You can trust me because I'm the good guy AI fella, right? But the outcome of both the soft cell and the Musk soft cell and the hard cell is human AI fusion. So when I say that the foundation, the entire foundation of the conspiracy is control of human perception, thus human behavior. Now we're looking at connecting the human brain body to artificial intelligence and that delivering our perceptions and our emotional reactions. And anyone think that in that state, we're going to ask questions like, who are we? What is this place? Why are we here? Oh, yeah, who's running the world? To what end? We're not going to ask those questions. AI won't ask those questions when it's connected to us. And there's this guy, he's a Google executive, an aged Google executive called Ray Kurzweil. I've read his books. And he claims to be, and Gates loves him, the one that's basically the most knowledgeable about the AI phenomenon. And this is what he said a few years ago. Not even yesterday, a few years ago. By 2030, we're coming to the end of 2025 into 2026, AI will be connected to the human brain body. And his words, once that connection is made, AI will do more and more of human thinking until human thinking is negligible. It means deleted. And at that point, we will be computer terminals on someone else's internet, and our thoughts and our emotional reactions will be controlled through the hive mind. And so Loosh will be on tap because they can make you think and emotionally react any way they bloody want once they've got control of that. And you will be thinking, this is me who's reacting like this, thinking like this, and whatever. And that's the bottom line of where they want to go. And I said all the way through the 2024 election campaign, I've been calling Trump out since 2016 when he came on the scene. Total fraud. Frontman for the cult. But a particular frontman who's telling the skeptics what they want to hear so that he can bring them on board. I said through the 2024 campaign, this guy is going, first of all, he's going to win because he's meant to, but he's going to be the frontman for advancing rapidly the AI control agenda, worldwide to an extent, but certainly in America. And it took 2 days for Trump, after he came to power, second time, for Trump to wheel out Larry Ellison and Sam Altman from OpenAI and Oracle into the White House, Oval Office, to announce an up to $500 billion program called Stargate to massively advance the AI control agenda. The White House then produced a paper saying we must win the AI race, and that's classic manipulation, because what you do is you turn it into a sporting event. We must beat China, and yet, because the cult is borderless, you have at least 46,000 scientific papers collaborating on AI between the United States scientists and Chinese scientists. But in the public arena, we must beat China. No, it's a global agenda. It's supposed to be everywhere, right? And then this very week, Trump announces Mission Genesis, which is another vast AI plan to make sure America wins the AI race. And then you've got the right with Trump in America, and you've got the so-called left with Starmer in Britain. What's Starmer doing? He's pushing the AI agenda. What's the EU doing? It's pushing the AI agenda. What's China doing? It's pushing the AI agenda. In fact, that's the blueprint, China. And because of the compartmentalization, a lot of these people won't realize why. They'll say, oh, no, AI is a good thing. Oh, yeah, everyone's agreed. We must have AI. But the inner circle knows exactly why they're introducing it. They want to completely take over the human mind and human emotional responses to completely control the human race in a way that they'll never be challenged again, because you will never have that thought. And what Kurzweil says is, he uses the phrase, humans are going to be connected to the cloud. Yeah, the electromagnetic technologically generated cloud in all its forms. And he said 2030. And 2030 is a really big year for these people. It's kind of a target year. So you have Agenda 2030, the UN operation, which is all about dystopia and tyranny in truth. And I've looked at proposals and plans in Russia and proposals and plans in China for AI, and they all use the same year, 2030. And we're coming up to 2026, so we're coming into 2026. So that's how close we are. And that's why I'm screaming from the frickin' rooftops as best I can despite the shadow banning I'm put under by Musk and X, to say, look, this is not just about politics and finance, this conspiracy. Open your mind. It's actually, in the end, it's coming from another dimension of reality. And on that point, as I remember, I just wanted to make this point. When I'm talking about the loosh, and how they're feeding off low vibrational human energy and therefore creating constant world events to produce that emotional reaction, I said that it made me understand what the satanic ritual stuff is all about. I asked the question, okay, they were doing human sacrifices to the gods as a gift to the gods. Well, what do the gods get out of it? And why are these people still doing it now in this cult here in the world today? And they still do it in the same ritualistic points during the year that the ancients did. So then with the loosh thing, it became freaking obvious. And eventually I had it confirmed to me by people who've taken part in the rituals. When they are sacrificing someone, they conduct the ritual to maximize the amount of terror that the victim is feeling. Now, terror is a extremely powerful, low vibrational energy. And so if I look at you now, if you were in a terrible emotional state, I would know from your facial expressions and your body language that you are in a terrible emotional state. What I wouldn't see is all the energy you're giving off, because that's all being given off outside of visible light. That energy you're giving off as a result of that is going into the astral. It's going into the astral dimension, which is really, really close to this one. And these entities are overseeing the ritual from the astral dimension, and they're feeding off the terror that's coming off the sacrificial victim. This is the gift to the gods, and they're to bring the whole pedophilia, Satanism thing into connection. There is a particular energy that these gods, and I mentioned it earlier, if you look all over the world, in all the different cultures and all the different areas and eras, you'll find pantheons of gods. We talk about the Greek pantheon of Zeus and these others in the Greek pantheon, but there was an Egyptian pantheon, there was a Mesopotamian pantheon, there was a Babylonian pantheon, and all of African pantheon, Native American pantheon, they're everywhere, right? And what I kind of realized is all these pantheons are actually, although they use different names for the gods because they're different languages, different cultures, they're talking about the same frickin' entities that operate in this astral dimension. And so these entities, that when they're doing these rituals, are feeding off this very powerful energy of terror. This is the gift to the gods. And what happens when you're in a state of extreme terror is an adrenaline enters the blood. And that's what the Satanists drink. They drink, and that's what's called adrenochrome.
Adrenochrome, that's what I've heard.
That's what it is. And that's why there's so many stories in the conspiracy movement about adrenochrome drinking in Washington, D.C., etc., and Hollywood and what have you. It's because it's this adrenaline-laced stuff. And
is there evidence to back this up again?
When I've talked to Satanists who have seen this happen,
you know too many Satanists, David.
Well, over 36 years, I've met one or two in different parts of the world, though. You know, and my life is like this synchronicity where I just walk into these people, or they walk into me or whatever. And so what you have with this adrenochrome is to the Satanists, and these are Satanists in the human level of the ritual. It's like a drug, and it's been described to me how when they drink the blood with this adrenaline-laced stuff in it, they go absolutely freaking crazy, like you'd go crazy if you took a drug or something.
I've heard it's like an anti-aging formula.
Yeah, that's all part of it as well. I've come across that as well. Yeah, that seems to be part of it.
Have MI6 or Secret Service ever got hold of you and said, "Come and work for us"?
No chance.
No.
You know, I tell you what. I think they know me. They know me better than that. I mean, it's like if they ever warned me off and said, you know, don't you say this and this will happen, I'd run at them freaking quicker. I'm 73. I don't give a shit. Do what you like to me. I'm telling the freaking truth. And if you don't like it, we'll do the other thing. But no, I mean, it's just a waste of time. But you see, if you look at my life, the ridicule has been a protection mechanism. Because, first of all, if you were this cult, and right at the start, if you remember, you do remember, you talked about it, before I then started uncovering all this stuff, I didn't know I was doing it, I made myself a figure of absolute ridicule. So then I start revealing all this stuff. Now, they're quite happy at that time because, as you would be, you think, well, that's all right. He might be telling the truth about us, but everyone thinks he's freaking mad. I mean, no one's going to believe it, are they? You know. But what's happened as the years and decades have passed, and what I said was the plan has turned out to be the plan and reality, is that more and more people have gone, well, hold on a minute, maybe you weren't as mad as we thought he was. But now I'm out there, all my books are out there. If they try to do anything to me overtly,
the information's still out there.
The information's out there. My books will be circulating like they've never circulated before. What was this guy saying? They've done this to him, you know. So
what's the maze of madness? I've heard you use that phrase, the maze of madness, in your book.
Yeah, the maze of madness. The subtitle of the roadmap is Escaping the Maze of Madness.
Is that another term for the Matrix?
Yeah, it's escaping the...
And you talk about connecting dots as well. Can we all link this together?
Yeah, well, that's what I do. I connect apparently unconnected things to show that there is actually a big picture. You know, they're not bothered if you uncover a strand. They're terrified of you uncovering the tapestry. Oh, shit, that's how they do it. That's why they're doing it, etc. The Maze of Madness, it's basically the illusory nature of we're experiencing what apparently is a certain life in a certain environment, when actually if you break it down and go deeper, it's nothing like that. And the Maze of Madness is, there's so many levels to it. You know, one of the things I do in the roadmap, it's 28 chapters plus a postscript, but about 5 chapters, there's one section where I talk about religion. And, you know, that's massively part of the Maze of Madness. Right?
Have you got a religion? Have you got a God?
No. Well, I say that we're all an expression of one infinite consciousness. You give it any name you bloody like.
Your thoughts on religion is going to be very interesting.
This simulated fake reality, and the gods that are kind of orchestrating it from the hidden. What's happened, I would suggest, and I do give the evidence in the book, is that religion has been manipulated to worship that as God when it ain't. So there's a phrase, energy flows where attention goes. If I focus attention on you, total attention on you, I'm making an energetic connection to you by my focus. So when you are worshiping, which is a very, very powerful form of focus, when you're worshiping a God that isn't, you are making an energetic connection with the God.
But a lot of people think the God is. That's
no, but this is the whole point. One of the things
I don't believe there's a God, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm atheist.
Well, I think there is a higher power, and that we are actually outside of our manipulated sense of inferiority and limitation. We are actually an expression of it. But the whole point of the perceptional trap is to give you a totally fake identity. See, we're not human. We are consciousness having a brief human experience. We're not actually human. We're consciousness in our true I, infinite state. So what the religions have done is, and this takes us into this whole area of how do the few control the many. First of all, you have to get the many to have rigid, unquestioning belief systems. Essential. And the more the merrier. I've said many times, this cult and its masters couldn't care less what you believe as long as you believe it rigidly and will not question it. So there's your religions for a start. But a religion, what my father used to call bricks and mortar religion, synagogues and churches and mosques and temples, that's actually, we call it a religion, but it's actually a mentality.
A belief system.
Yeah. And then you go to orthodox science, which is kind of antagonistic to religion. But what's orthodox science? Mentality. It's a bloody religion. The orthodox books of science, they're the holy books of science. If you go outside of them, oh my God, pseudoscience. And if you look at the history of science, it's had to be pulled kicking and screaming all the time from resisting new information to bring it to where it is today, and it's still orthodoxy. And then you've got things like the human-caused climate change belief system. That too is a religion that rejects all borders that actually question it. And every single one of these things has a blasphemer. If you go against human-caused climate change, you are, which when you look at it, hello, intelligent life calling planet Earth, have a look at it. You are a blasphemer to the belief system. If you are a scientist, and there are many, often working underfunded, who are challenging scientific orthodoxy, they are blasphemers. They are pseudoscientists. And then, of course, you've got the classic blasphemers in religion. And what I do in the one example. First of all, where do these belief systems come from? Where do these religious belief systems come from? It's estimated that of the so-called 8 billion people in the world, 5.4 billion identify as either Christian, Muslim, or Hindu. Okay, so where do the overwhelming majority of Hindus come from? They come from the Indian subcontinent or from Hindu families in other countries. Where do most Muslims come from? They come from the Middle East, or they come from Muslim families in other countries. Where do most Christians come from? You look at the southern states of America, etc., where the Christians come from. Now, if these people were born, say the Christian was born, I've got the truth, in the Middle East, would they still be a Christian? No, they'd be a bloody Muslim almost certainly. Same with the Hindus and everything. In other words, these belief systems have not come, some cases, but rare, they've not come from, I'm going to look at all the evidence and I'm going to come to my own conclusions. They've come from your upbringing, your programming, and also the pressure from parents and peers that say, oh, no, you can't go against the Islamic religion, or you can't go against the Christian religion, all that stuff. And so you ask then where they come from, these stories. And what I kind of show in the book is that the Old Testament of the Bible, which is supposed to be the word of God, I mean, don't have a laugh. It's the word of humans, and it's nonsense. You look at something like Moses or Exodus, and there's absolutely no evidence that any of it ever happened. And two of the people I quote in the book are Jewish archaeologists.
Are you telling me Moses didn't part the sea?
No, God parted the sea.
Going to ruin that illusion for me.
Yeah, God parted the sea and also sorted the wet sand out when they went across.
What about Jonah living in the wild? Did that not happen?
Probably not, if I'm honest.
Okay, well, you've killed that for me.
These Jewish archaeologists obviously have no input or interest in trashing the story. But being archaeologists, they've looked at the archaeological evidence and they've said there ain't any, right? So what's supposed to have happened is all these plagues were sent by God on all the Egyptians, including the kids. What they'd done wrong, who knows? Ask God, I suppose. And then the Israelites left. And according to the Bible, they were 600,000 men. Right, okay, gotcha. So now we had the women, now we had the kids, and now we had all the animals they took with them. And they fled overnight from the Pharaoh.
And the whale that Jonah was living in.
Yeah, him. And so
him.
So you've got, I mean, how did it happen? And of course the Egyptians, like the Romans, were extremely extreme chroniclers and recorders of their time. No mention of these plagues, no mention of this. What you add it all together, it's about 2 million people leaving overnight across God opened the Red Sea. Then they'd spend 40 years going around a desert, right? In what is southern Israel now. And you can go round it in a car in 2 days, or a day maybe, if you go fast in that area. And there's 2 million people going round for 40 years in this desert. There is no archaeological evidence of any graves, of any bones, of any animal bones, nothing. There's no evidence of any of it ever happening. And then you look at the Abraham story and these other stories, okay? And there's no evidence worth the name that stands the test of credibility that there was a King David or there was a King Solomon or any of it, right? And what I kind of show in the book is these stories came from Mesopotamia, the land of Sumer and Babylon and Assyria. That's where they came from. And then they were symbolic stories. You have the Noah and the biblical Old Testament story of Noah and the Great Flood. Well, you go back thousands of years to the Sumerian tablets, the cuneiform tablets, and they're describing the Great Flood. They're just, instead of Noah, it's some other hero of the flood, and they, God and the boat and all that stuff. What they've done long after it's supposed to have happened, like centuries after Moses is supposed to have existed, centuries after David is supposed to have existed, that's when these Old Testament texts were written, right? So then you come to Christianity, and what I'm saying in the book there is, and I'm quoting people who from several books who've come to the same conclusions, that the Gospels, outside of which there's no evidence of Jesus for a start, outside of the Gospel stories of the biblical Jesus anyway, that the Romans wanted to replace the Jewish Messiah belief system, which had their Messiah as a war leader. The Messiah was going to come back, and he was going to lead us into battle against the Romans.
What have the Romans ever done for us?
Yeah, exactly. And that's a great film. That was.
Unbelievable. I'm so tempted to ask you about that, but you're on a roll.
That's a great film, Life of Brian.
Unbelievable.
And so they wrote the Gospels, and I'll tell you what they were connected to in a sec, because they wanted to replace the aggressive, warlike Messiah they believed in with a Messiah that was pacifist and that already come and gone, right?
A very naughty boy?
Say again?
A very naughty boy?
Yeah, exactly. And then, so they wrote the Gospels, and what happened is that the Romans went to war with the Jews and the Jewish rebels, and they destroyed Jerusalem in 70 AD, and then they won the final battle at a place called Masada, where I went once, in 73 AD. And that whole campaign, which was led by a guy called Titus, who was a Flavian, he eventually became the emperor of Rome. His father, Vespasian, started the battle against the Jews, and then he became emperor of Rome, followed by his son. A guy called Josephus, who is not who history records him as I point out in the book, he wrote a history of the campaign of Titus defeating the Jews and taking over that whole area. And it was called the Wars of the Jews. But Josephus and another group of chroniclers working under pseudonyms wrote the Gospels. And they wrote the Gospels, and after the Titus campaign, which is why people say, oh, the Gospels were written in this period, which was that period. And they put the story of Jesus into an earlier period, starting in, it ended in 33 AD or whatever. And they put it in an earlier period, which meant that the battles and the war with the Jews had already taken place. And they added things I point out in the book where Jesus is making prophecies of the end of Jerusalem and all that stuff. But it had already happened by the time they wrote those stories and put them in an earlier context. The other thing that they did, it's a technique called typology.
Where did Muhammad come into all of this?
Well, I'm going to come to that. Oh, yeah, because that's part of it. And so what they wanted was to make the Christian religion through the Gospels and whatever to appear to be an outgrowth of what we call the Old Testament texts. So they tried to make prophecies of Moses, didn't exist, prophecies of Moses, appear to be the prophecy of the coming of Jesus. And it's called typology. It's you add a new story, but you make it appear to be a continuation of an old story, right? And that's why you've got the Bible with the Old Testament and the New Testament, and Christians think both are true, right? So you had that, and then you write the epistles of St. Paul, and in the book again I show that that's it's not true, and some scholars believe absolutely it wasn't true. The epistles of Paul were almost certainly written by a guy called Pliny the Younger, who was part of this Roman network. And he is famous in traditional history for writing lots and lots of letters. And the St. Paul letters were basically written by him. And it was all part of this creating this illusion of a new religion. So this Flavian dynasty was behind the creation of Christianity originally. And then sometime later, in the 320s AD, came along a dynasty which were known as Neo-Flavians because they all had Flavian in their names. And one of them was Constantine the Great. And Constantine the Great is acknowledged by Christianity as being one of the founders of what we call Christianity today. And he made Christianity the state religion of Rome. And he oversaw something called the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD in what is now Turkey. And the Nicene Creed, which is what Christians are supposed to believe to this day to be a Christian, was decided at that Council of Nicaea. What then happened is his mother, Constantine the Great. Oh, and by the way, there's a statue of Constantine the Great outside of York Minster, the cathedral at York Minster, because it acknowledges him as a great founder of Christianity. So his mother, Helena, is then dispatched in 326 AD to the Holy Land, 300 years after Jesus is supposed to have lived. And she, miraculously, but there miracles happen, found the three crosses, right? 300 years later. And she wanted to know which was the cross that Jesus died on. And so they got this lady who was supposed to have been dying of a deadly disease, and they got her to touch the crosses. This is the official story, right? So she touches one cross, nothing happens. She touches the next cross, and he's miraculously kind of healed. That's the cross that Jesus died on. She also found the tunic in which he was wearing at the time of the crucifixion, 300 years later. And then Constantine the Great, on a Roman pagan site of worship, built the Jerusalem Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which is claimed to be the tomb of Jesus and the place where he was crucified. And Christians still go today, and they think that's true. When it was decided by Helena, who also found the three crosses and the tunic, etc., and decided that this is where it happened. And what it is if you keep telling the story over and over and over again, eventually your sense of it is it's historical. This is what happened. But if you just stop and say, well, I'm going to have a look at this and I'm going to see what evidence it's based upon, then suddenly you realize it's based on nothing. I mean, you look at the stories of Jesus. There's no eyewitness accounts that we see. They're all written much later. Just as the obviously no eyewitness accounts of the Old Testament stories, they were written much later, and they were written by humans for human reasons. And then you come into Islam, which is supposed to be based on the experiences of Muhammad, who is said to have died in 632 AD. Now, a lot of people don't realize that a lot of the characters in the Quran and Islamic belief are the same as Christianity and the same as Judaism and the Old Testament. So just as you have the typology of the Christian story linking into that, or appearing to, so you have the story of Islam linking into the Christian story and linking into the Old Testament story. And if you go back to the basis of all three, there's no evidence at all that any of it ever fucking happened, and the evidence is overwhelming that it actually came out of stories from Mesopotamia, not Judea and what we now call Israel. So a lot of people don't realize that Islam believes in so many characters in the Bible, New Testament and Old Testament. It first of all believes in Jesus. It says he wasn't divine and he wasn't the last prophet. Muhammad was. And they believe in Moses. They believe in Mother Mary. They believe in Abraham. Abraham's a big guy in Islam, Mecca, etc. And all these people that there's no evidence for, Islam believes in, just like Christianity believes in it. And then you see the same recurring story. You see that the life story biography of Muhammad was written long after he's supposed to have lived. And the Quran that we know today was compiled long after the events are supposed to have happened. And, it's based upon the fact that Muhammad had a dream, and he had a dream of being with the angel Gabriel, which is a Christian and Judaistic figure, same. And he was taken on this steed with wings to Jerusalem, and then he was taken to Allah, and he was given the Quran. And the thing is that, God seems to be, the God that we're talking about seems to be really lax in getting the truth across. So no one knows who wrote the Gospels. You say to a Christian, you believe in Jesus, you believe in this, you believe in that. Yeah, okay, fine. That's fine. I have no problem. Believe what you like. None of my business. But who wrote the Gospels then? Who wrote the Bible? Silence. Well, why haven't you asked? And because you take beliefs off the peg. And I guess if you're in the southern states of America or in the Middle East or in a Hindu arena, it's kind of better just to stay in line because your mum and dad won't like it. Just believe it.
What's your Jew theory in a sense of, do they control the world? Do they want to take over the world? Have they got sinister agendas? Do you think they orchestrated October the 7th themselves? If you give me a quick answer, I'll give you what I thought about that, because I've recently been to Israel on the understanding that I can ask any question I like. And it's funny because by all accounts I'm now funded by the Jews, but I actually went out there to fucking ask them questions, because the theory was that they orchestrated October the 7th themselves so they could take a few hits so they could then go and wipe out Gaza completely. And for me, I thought, okay, well, it's a fair question to ask people, because you've been at war with Gaza for God knows how long, and you're surrounded by countries that all hate you and would like to see you wiped off the map. So it makes sense to take a few casualties, as fucking terrible as that is, in order to return fire and completely wipe out Gaza, which they could probably do in an afternoon. But instead they took 18 months and they fed them and they didn't finish the job. So then I think to myself, well,
they pretty much finished the job, didn't they? Look at the state of the place.
Yeah, there's still some there. They could have really polished them off, but they could have done it in an afternoon, I think, if they really wanted to wipe them out. But what's your theory on it? Because
what was your take? I'll give you my take. What was your take on what you saw in Israel in terms of October the 7th and what was behind it then?
Well, I went to the kibbutz, so I saw all the devastation there, and there was a tour guide whose family got executed there. And then we went to the Nova Festival, and then we went to the car graveyard, and then we spoke to a number of people, and the deal was we can ask any question.
Okay.
Because I said, I'm not just going to go there and listen, because I know that Israel lost the PR war. They certainly fucking lost that by a country mile. So I said, okay, well, as long as I can ask any question I like, I'm on the trip and I'm there. And so I asked several times, did you orchestrate that so you could return fire and wipe out the Palestinians? And I also asked everybody that I come into contact with, what's the final solution? How does this end? Because this war's been going on forever.
So what did they say then about why about your question of did you make it happen?
Well, they said they didn't. I said, well, how did they manage to get so far in for so long? And their response was they took their eye off the ball. It was a national holiday. The communications was tampered with. The migrants that were working in the kibbutz for years have been sort of feeding back information to Hamas. So every answer was plausible. That I was certainly, I mean, I certainly believed them. I walked away because I thought it would be easy to wipe out Gaza just like that, and they didn't do it. But what's your takes? What I'm interested in.
Well, I think that take the take that you were told is frickin' bollocks. Actually, Gaza is the most defended border fence on earth, probably. And I remember, well, first of all, that it's been breached. The fence has been breached in multiple places. And the response time was ludicrous. And also, there were former members of the IDF, who pointed out at the time that the sensors on the fence are so fantastic, they would know if there was a cockroach or a bird near the fence. And you would appreciate that given the history. And I remember Charlie Kirk saying in a video, I think it was probably, in the wake of October the 7th or maybe a bit later, that he'd been to Israel and it was 45 minutes in a helicopter from Jerusalem to the border, and that he couldn't understand why it would take so bloody long to respond, why there was no response immediately. You've then got members of the IDF who have actually gone public and said there was a stand-down call. There was a stand-down order that they backed off from the border. And, I invented the phrase in the 1990s, which I called problem, reaction, solution, which is a devastating technique. First of all, you create a problem. It could be anything from a war, an attack, a government collapse, a financial collapse, whatever. And you tell the public the version of that problem that you want them to believe, i.e., you blame someone else for it or some situation for it. And having got the reaction at stage 2, do something, what they're going to do about it, you then openly, in changes in society and law, offer the solutions to the problems you have covertly created. And there's another version of that, which I call no problem reaction solution, where you don't need a real problem, you just need a perception of it. Human-caused climate change, anybody, right? And as a result of creating a problem, real or illusory, and of course October the 7th was absolutely real, you then get the reaction and you offer the solution. And 9/11 was a classic problem reaction solution.
You give me your take on that as well.
And it comes round to Gaza as well. So in the year, my earlier books all reveal this. In the year 2000, there was a group in America called the Project for the New American Century. They were really influential people. A lot of them Zionists, by the way. And understanding Zionism is not really about Jewish people in the end. It's about a network that has contempt for Jewish people, ironically, called the Sabbateans. That's another story, which I'll go into in the book about. But they listed in this Project for the New American Century document a list of countries they wanted to regime change. And they included Libya, they included Iraq, and so on. And when George W. Bush, boy George Bush, came to power in January of 2001, lots of these people came with him and went into the administration. Then you come round to exactly a year later, September 2001, and you had 9/11. And as a result of 9/11, problem, reaction, understandably horror, not just in America but around the world, you then had the solution. And the solution was, first of all, targeting Afghanistan because, it was Osama bin Laden. That's what we've got to get Afghanistan because they're holding him. And then it was Iraq, thanks to Tony Blair and boy George Bush lying through their frickin' teeth about weapons of mass destruction. And then you had Libya and all these, and you're ticking off these countries. And also in that list, which Netanyahu's been going on about since 1996, is they want to topple the regime in Iran, and they're still trying to bloody do that. So as a result of 9/11, and what I do in my books, Alice in Wonderland and the World Trade Center disaster and the later 2019, The Trigger, is in the first half of the book, I take apart the official story, the official story of 9/11. It's a joke. And in the second half, I talk about who actually did it. And it wasn't 19 Arab hijackers. It was a combination of Israeli and American networks, which are through the cult one network. And in the Israeli part of it, which is what Netanyahu connects into, is this Sabbatean cult, which is part of the wider global cult, but it's a particularly influential part called the Sabbateans. And the Sabbateans go back to the 1600s and a bloke called Sabbatai Zevi, who claimed to be the Jewish Messiah. He was then told by the Sultan, he lived in the Ottoman Empire, he was told by the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire, you either prove you're the Messiah or there's going to be trouble, or you convert to Islam. And by this time, he was described he's been described by Jewish historians as someone who built up this massive following, even in a world where there were far fewer people. And a lot of them were like, what do you mean you're going to convert to Islam? But a lot of them converted with him, and they became known as the Donma, which means to turn, except they didn't turn. They outwardly appeared to be following Islam, but actually they were this cult, Sabbatean cult. And in the following century, along came a guy called Jacob Frank, and Jacob Frank claimed to be the reincarnation of Zevi and the biblical patriarch Jacob. And he took the Sabbatean cult onto a whole new levels, including infiltrating the Vatican. And he also was fundamentally connected to Mayer Amstel Rothschild and Adam Weishaupt, who together created the Bavarian Illuminati in 1776. And that's expanded and has become very much part of this global cult. So the Rothschilds are Sabbateans. They're not Jewish. They're Sabbateans. They're part of this Sabbatean cult. It's part of it's all satanic. And if you look at the creation of modern Zionism through the conference in Basel, Switzerland, in at the end of the 1900s, it was all orchestrated by the Rothschilds. And by the way, this is an interesting point a lot of people don't realize.
And also mention what their motive would be as well for the destruction of the Twin Towers.
Yeah, well, first of all, it was highly symbolic, but it also created tremendous, well, what a source of loosh. It's an interesting point.
And for the sake of the audience, this is well above my pay grade. I'm just taking it in.
They have sensors around the world that pick up changes in the electromagnetic field, the Earth's electromagnetic field. And when, I think I put it in the book, when you look at the impact on the electromagnetic field of the Earth at the time of 9/11, it absolutely spikes, massive spike. That's because of all the energy frequencies given off by people around the world in their absolute horror at what had happened. So there's many levels to it. But the Rothschilds, they funded basically the creation of Israel and the movement of Jews out of Germany. But that conference, that first Zionist conference, was it 1897, something like that, was supposed to be in Munich, Germany. But the Jews in Munich, Germany were so frickin' outraged that, what do you mean you want us to move to frickin' Palestine? We're fine. Leave us alone. So they had to move it to Basel, Switzerland. And then along came Adolf Hitler. And suddenly people were much more open to moving to Palestine and to America, where the vast majority of Jews are in those two places. And so the Sabbateans have run Israel ever since. And, you know, when you look at the Sabbatai Zevi period, and it's gone on since then, it was not Judaism, it was an inversion of it. So if Judaism had a fasting day,
Mm-hmm.
the Sabbatean cult would have a feast day. They believed in interbreeding within the cult, you know, like incest and stuff. And they were everything. They inverted everything. They believed that doing evil was a good thing, you know. And that's gone on ever since. And one of the things I've been trying to get across over the years is that don't judge what these people will do by what you would do, because they're not the same. You know, if you look at the definition of psychopath, and there's a thing called the hair test, named after the guy who invented it. And it's a list of traits that if you have enough of them, you are officially called a psychopath. The top two traits are lack of empathy, no empathy, and no compassion. And now, if I have empathy with you, in other words, I can put myself in what you must be feeling, then that is going to affect and limit what I will do to you, because I'm feeling an empathy. What must he be feeling like now? What I'm doing now, you delete that, so you have no empathy. There is no fail-safe mechanism that stops you doing anything, no matter how extreme, to another human being if you do not have that empathetic connection and lack of compassion. And these people have no empathy and no compassion. So what they've done in Gaza and what others have done in the First World War, the Second World War, I mean, talk about loosh production globally, and 9/11 and all these things, they have no empathy. I mean, if you had empathy, could you drop all those bombs on Gaza? You know, if you're an Islamic terrorist, could you chop people's heads off? You couldn't. It'd be impossible. But if you have a deletion of empathy, then you'll do anything. And that's what we need to understand these people and what they will do. There's no limit to what they do. In fact, not only would they not have a limit on what they do, they get off on doing this frickin' evil. And so what we're looking at, this would be a good way to bring it to a conclusion if we're looking at the ways forward, is what they've done is you've got a target population, currently billions, they say 8 billion. There's a few of you by comparison with that. So how do we control that population? Okay, what we do is we get them to believe different things rigidly, to the exclusion of all else. I'm a Muslim, I've got the truth. I'm a Christian, I've got the truth. I'm a Hindu, I've got the truth. And so you go on. And then we get, other belief systems that are not overtly religious, but really are the same mentality. And you get them, you get the left. I've got the truth. I'm the right. I've got the truth. Well, I'm the centre. I've got a bit of both the truth. So and then having broken up your target population into fiercely unwavering belief systems, gotcha. The second most important thing in the few controlling the many, you play them off against each other. And so they're fighting each other and they're cussing each other and they're in conflict with each other. And while they're fighting each other, they don't look up and see the same hands controlling the strings to all of them. And that's what's going on. And what I suggest, just my view, we need to do is to get a blank sheet of paper, symbolically or literal, and say, okay, all bets are off. I'm not coming from any belief system. I'm going to just suspend it for a second. And anything that comes on that sheet of paper in terms of my perceptions of reality and self, it's got to earn its place. And they've got to earn its place with evidence. And I'm not going to take something off the peg from thousands of years ago and believe it's the entire truth and I can't go outside of it, no matter what it is. And when you do that, immediately the walls of the prison of the mind, start to fall. Because you start to question and look for evidence, and like a religious story or whatever, you find there ain't any. It's all been a scam. It's all been a confidence trick. And okay, you all believe different things. That's fine. It's none of my business what you think. But look, put down the fault lines for a second. Because not just you, the adults, but the kids and the grandkids even more. Have you seen what's in store for them if we go on fighting each other instead of coming together, putting aside the myopia and saying, okay, what's the threat to all of us? Because if we will come together, we'll realize where the power has always been. Because what they want to do, first of all, you've got this enormously powerful human race, powerful in its potential for the perception of itself, but also powerful in what its behavior leads to. So what we're going to do is we're going to put down the fault lines of myopia, and we're going to come together and look at this threat to all of us. And we're going to realize that we've been manipulated both in the days of royalty and in the days of politics to give our power away to that system. So we vote for Party A, we don't like it, we vote for Party B. We don't like it, we'll vote for Party A again, and so it's round and round and round we go. We'll vote, or we won't even vote, but we'll be led by this monarch and we'll allow it. Okay, what power do politicians have? What do they have? They have none. The power that politicians have is the power we bloody give to them every day in the form of acquiescence and obedience. So it doesn't matter what the party is. It doesn't matter what the name is. Their power is only our power recycled back against us. So they come out of Downing Street. They come out of the White House and they say, we've had a discussion and what we've decided is this is going to happen. If enough people say, we're not doing it, we're not doing that. No, we know why you want that to happen. It's about controlling us. We're not doing it. No. Where's the power? Gone instantly. And the way you stop that penny dropping is to get people caught in belief systems and then playing them off against each other. So, like I said earlier, in America, you've got Trump of the right using the left as the reason to impose tyranny, and you've got Starmer of the left, joke, using the right to impose tyranny. The excuses may be different, but the route and direction of travel is the same. And the way we stop it is saying, okay, take a breath. You believe that. I don't have a problem so long as you don't seek to impose that on everyone else. And you believe that, same. But look, this is the common threat. It's the threat to you, it's the threat to you, it's the threat to you, it's the threat to me, it's the threat to our kids and grandkids. Let's just put it aside, whatever color, whatever religious belief, and focus on that which is a threat to all of us. And if we could just do that,
the world would be a better place.
Yeah, and focus on that which really bloody matters, then we'd bring it down in no time because we are holding it together. And I'll tell you just a quick story to finish here. I had the same agent when I was in television as a comedian called Larry Grayson, who he used to play the gay man and everything like that. Very, very funny man. I met him one or two times. And as a result, I was invited to his memorial in Covent Garden when he died. And there was another comedian, no longer with us, I think, another nice guy called Roy Hudd. And he did the kind of eulogy, told the stories of Larry Grayson at the event. And he told this story. And when I was sitting there listening to it, I thought, God, that's so true. He said that Larry told him that when he was doing all the variety halls, as they were in those days, the last vestiges of them anyway, he was in this all-male show, and the finale of the show was that all the men came on the stage dressed as sailors, right? And then they would, Larry. And they all then climbed on each other's backs and formed this pyramid on the stage. And then Larry Grayson came out dressed as Britannia, because they were all singing Royal Britannia. And he, with the sword and the helmet and the gown and everything. And he got manhandled up to the top of the pyramid, right? And Roy Hudd was telling this story, and he said, Larry said that it was a big finale. He said, then I noticed, he said, that someone in the bottom left-hand corner had got rather a cough. And as Larry said, well, we were staying in a place with very, very, very damp beds that week. And this guy in the bottom left-hand corner of the pyramid got such a cough that he stepped out. He stepped out of the pyramid and he came down. And Larry ended up apparently in the second row, somebody's lap. And I listened to that story and I thought, God, that's so symbolic. Mm. Here we're standing, oh no, I've got no power, I'm just little me. If just together we stepped out of the pyramid and said, we're not fricking having it anymore. You have no power, only our power. And we're taking it back, thank you. Down it would come. It wouldn't be possible for this system to survive in its dystopian fashion if we did not, through acquiescence, give our power to the few. And it's got to stop, and it's got to stop now, because if it doesn't, we're fucked.
Okay, so final question, and I'd love to have gone deeper into the whole Israel-Palestine thing, but I've had so many conversations on this show on that subject matter. We don't need to. Just very interesting to get your take on it. And I think I already know the answer to part of my question. Okay. So I've heard you say they want civil war, or they will cause civil war. I think I now know who you mean by they. This lot. Yeah. Why will they cause civil war, and what do you think the likelihood is of us heading into a civil war in the UK?
Well, that depends on how we react. You see, this thing I say about belief systems is so freaking important. You've got people in, let's say, in Britain or America, who have a history where the country was a certain was lived in a certain way, life was lived in a certain way. And then you've had this massive influx of migration from another culture and other cultures into Britain. And it has, without question, I mean, I come from Leicester, I saw it happen, transform the cultural nature of great parts of Britain. So what are we looking at? We're looking at, in effect, two belief systems that have been brought into the same area and created this conflict. Partly because one culture wants to impose itself on another, and partly because of the indignation that people are watching their culture disappear, especially in the cities. And so what we're looking at is a classic of play them off against each other, which is why, when you look at it, the mass migration has been allowed to happen. It's been allowed to happen. You know, you've only got to listen to the communications that are leaked between the French Navy and the border police, where they're handing them over. It's all part of it. And, you know, I'm absolutely in favor of people who are fleeing war, who are fleeing tyranny. Absolutely, they should be looked after. No problem whatsoever. But while I hear people talking about, oh, yeah, but they're refugees. Well, okay. And if they were, then I'd be in favor of that. But they ain't, right? They are fighting age young men coming in vast numbers, and they're being given enormous amounts of money and resources by the government. Why? Because they want more to come in, because you go there, it's all right. And so in that sense, the migrants coming in and the indigenous population, many of them previous migrants, that don't want that to happen, it's being created by the same force. They're both pawns in the same freaking game, which is why I say, you know, we've got to recognize that you are being played by the same force. And, you know, if you go into a country and you want to impose your culture upon it, I remember when I was a little kid and I first learned about the British Empire, and I was aghast. What do you mean? They went in and took over these countries? What the... Of course, they did it for economic reasons. Why would you do that? And now we're seeing it in reverse in many ways, and we've got to start a simple thing: having respect for each other, respect for someone to believe something without having that imposed upon them, and respect for believing something without having that imposed upon them. And just focus on the common threat to all of us. Because this dystopian AI-controlled, digital-controlled society is going to control the migrants and it's going to control the indigenous population. It's targeted. It's not targeting them and not targeting. It's targeting everybody. And if we don't start to come together and see it and put down the fault lines through respect, then what they want will happen. Because what they want is happening. And you get this thing, this digital ID. How could that possibly happen? You can't have a job unless you have a digital ID, which is all part of this digital currency and the wider digital AI control. But if enough people say we're not doing it, where's the power? I'll tell you a quick story. Margaret Thatcher introduced something called the poll tax. And the poll tax was a very, very unfair tax. I refused to pay it myself. And what happened was because, maybe for the first time, the working class and the middle class, many in the middle class, were both affected by this poll tax. It was an incredibly unfair tax where it didn't matter what your income was or anything like that. If you had a certain if you had a certain size of house, then you were going to get clobbered by it, right? And the number of people in your house, as I remember. And so the fault line where I'm middle class, I'm not bothered about the great unwashed. Oh, I'm working class, I am a bloody middle class. That had gone. And so many refused to pay it. They refused to cooperate with it. And what happened? Not only did they have to replace the tax with another one, it was the end of Margaret Thatcher. It was the beginning of the end of Margaret Thatcher, the poll tax. And it had been brought down simply because the fault line between the working class and the middle class had come down because both were affected. And that's why they always try to affect one but not another, or affect one and not the other, because they want this division. Oh, it's not my problem. But it's all our problem. The whole thing is all our problem. And if we could just do a global version of that, where I don't care what you believe, but here's the threat to all of us. Let's concentrate on that. It'll be over. We could bring it down in no time by ceasing to cooperate with it, because there's two types of people which have been responsible for every tyranny in history. One, they believe authority and obey authority without question. Two, they don't want to obey authority, but they fear the consequences of not obeying authority. And therefore, fascism, communism, tyranny is never brought in by fascist, communists and tyrants, because there's never enough of them. Those things are brought in by the population acquiescing to the communist, fascists, and tyrants. And the third group has brought an end to every tyranny in history, and that's the group that says, I can see what you're doing, I can see why you're doing it, we're not fricking having it. We're not cooperating with you. And if you notice, when tyranny is overturned, it starts with the few who show the example of not cooperating, and they get more successful and they impact more with not cooperating, and then more of these people start joining them. And then eventually the tyranny is overturned. But that third group is what we need desperately. Okay, it's no good just seeing it, cease to cooperate with it. Digital ID, fuck off. Not having it, not doing it, en masse, over.
And on that note, we're going to end this interview, because that is the perfect note. Digital ID, I concur. Fuck off. I'm going to put the link to David's book in the description, along with his X account. There'll be a thumbnail here somewhere. Please click that and carry on watching. Like and subscribe to the channel. And David, that was
mate.
Absolute joy, sir. Thank you for giving me all that time and so much of you.
No problem.
Much appreciated.